Hi there, I'm Marcy. On my wedding day, right in front of friends, cameras, and champagne toasts, my parents handed me a frame that read, "To our biggest disappointment." They called it a joke, laughed like it was clever, but that was just the beginning. They'd already stolen my ideas, used my money behind my back, and twisted my silence into a weapon. And I let it happen. For years. Why? Because I thought love meant staying quiet. There's something eerie about Southern silence. It stretches long, like the moss-covered oaks hanging low over the grounds of Willow Creek Manor. Beautiful, deliberate, and hiding more than it shows. That's exactly how the day felt. My wedding day. Savannah in late spring is the kind of picturesque people book photographers for, but that day felt like something else, like a stage set too perfectly. The sky was gold, the strings played soft, and I smiled until my jaw ached. Everyone assumed I was the kind of bride who'd cry tears of joy at the altar. Instead, I was just trying to keep my hands from trembling. Jonas looked at me like I was magic. That part was real. He held my hand through the entire ceremony like it tethered him to this world. If I had any doubt left about saying yes, he erased it with one look when the officiant asked if I was ready to begin again. And yet, deep inside me, there was a knot that hadn't loosened in years. It was tied to something no wedding could fix. My family. I should have known better than to expect anything different. I'd convinced myself maybe, just maybe, they'd show up for me like I'd shown up for them all these years. But hope has a way of making a fool out of people like me. My mother, Avis, made her entrance fashionably late, dressed in taupe shimmer that caught the light and demanded attention, her signature move. She air-kissed my cheek like I was a co-worker, not her daughter, and whispered, "You're not late, that's good," as if I'd ever been the problem. Then came Delphine. White dress, no irony. Her heels clicked on the stone like a warning shot. She smiled like she knew something I didn't. There was no, "You look stunning," or "Congratulations." Just that grin she always wore when she'd rigged a game and couldn't wait to watch me lose. I told myself not to read too much into it. Maybe I was just tired or nervous or still carrying old wounds in a new dress. But that illusion cracked a few hours earlier, while the florist was setting up, and I went back inside for a moment of quiet. Passing the kitchen hallway, I heard her voice, clear as glass. "Wait till she sees it. She'll either cry or combust." My mother's chuckle followed. "It's just cheeky. She'll survive." I froze. I wanted to confront them, to scream, "What did you do?" But instead, I did what I'd always done. I swallowed it, smiled when the planner asked if I wanted to see the cake table again, said no, returned to the mirror and touched up my blush. Survival mode, my oldest skill. Hours later, the ceremony wrapped, toasts were made, everyone clapped a little too loudly. I watched Delphine scroll on her phone through most of it. She raised her glass during Jonas's speech but didn't say a word during mine. And then, as the reception moved into the courtyard, came the moment I'll never forget. It was Delphine, of course, who handed the gift to the MC. A neatly wrapped box with cream paper and gold trim. The card read, "From Mom and Delphine." Cute! The MC made a joke, something about sentimental sisters, and invited me to unwrap it in front of everyone. I didn't want to. Every cell in my body said don't. But too many eyes were on me. I smiled, peeled back the paper, and opened the box. It was a wooden frame. Thick, heavy. The kind people hang in hallways or above mantels, and engraved across the top in polished brass letters, "To our biggest disappointment, finally settling." I stared. The words didn't compute at first. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misread it. A prank, something from another table. But no. Delphine was filming me. Her phone tilted at an angle she'd practiced. "It's just a joke," she called out, her voice bright like confetti. A few guests laughed, nervously. Jonas stood still, shoulders tight, eyes locked on the frame. My father looked at his plate. My mother smiled like it was some edgy Hallmark moment. I didn't say a word. I placed the frame gently on the dessert table, right beside the lemon tarts my mother insisted we include because they're classic. Then I turned back to the crowd and said, "Thank you. That's it. No scene, no tears. Just a thank you with a smile so calm it made Delphine lower her phone. But inside me, something flipped. I wasn't hurt. I was done. People like them don't use knives. They use moments, public ones they can later rewrite as jokes. They laugh while you bleed and then ask why you're being dramatic. They didn't know I'd heard them earlier. They didn't expect me to stand tall, let alone smile. But what they really didn't expect was that this wedding wasn't the beginning of us. It was the beginning of me, without them. I looked around at the guests. The lights shimmered. The music played. The air smelled of roses and champagne. But something new had entered my lungs. Something clean. It was the scent of truth. I whispered to myself just under my breath, "You don't get to do this again." They thought this was a cute way to remind me where I stood. What they didn't realize was, it marked the last time I'd stand quietly. By the time Jonas and I reached the hotel, the silence had taken on a different weight. It wasn't the quiet you get after a party winds down. It was heavier, like something had been stripped clean and left bare, the kind of stillness that doesn't comfort but confirms. He fell asleep fast, suit jacket still tossed over the chair, shoes kicked half under the bed. I let him rest. He'd done his part. He was the calm to my chaos tonight, and I knew this wasn't his battle. Not yet. I sat by the window in a white robe that didn't feel like mine. The Savannah skyline blinked faintly outside. The lights of wedding guests' Ubers still scattered across the long driveway below. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Not my face, just the outline of someone trying too hard not to feel. But feelings don't ask permission, do they? I opened my notes app, typed slowly, list things they don't see, then paused, not sure what to write first. Then came the words. They don't see how much it cost me to love them anyway. And just like that, my mind dragged me backward. 1 year earlier. It was mid-October. Atlanta was cooling down, and I had just wrapped a funding pitch for a beach retreat brand I'd been working on for almost 8 months. Everything was finally aligning. My vision, my capital, my projections. I remember sitting at my dining table, sipping lukewarm coffee and adjusting the last deck slide when the phone rang. It was my mother. She never called during the day. Her voice cracked before I even said hello. She talked about overdue property taxes, refinancing gone sideways, and how they might lose the lake place if something didn't change. I could hear her pacing. Her breath was shallow. She said she didn't want to ask, but she had no one else. And I didn't hesitate. Of course I didn't. I told her I'd transfer 40 grand that afternoon. She gasped, "Oh, baby, you don't have to." But we both knew she expected I would. That was the role I played. I also sent her the PDF proposal, titled Coastal Reset. It was clean, light, filled with natural tones and glass accents, a space designed for creative restoration. I had poured myself into it. "Maybe if y'all end up keeping the house," I wrote in the email, "this could be the vibe to help rejuvenate it." She never replied to that part. 6 months later, I was scrolling through Instagram during a client flight delay when a photo stopped me cold. There it was. Delphine in a linen jumpsuit, standing in front of a freshly renovated beach house. Caption, "My healing home reveal. Every element was mine." The wicker pendant lights, the sage green backsplash tile, the oversized canvas art from a local artist I'd featured in my deck. And the kicker? Tagline across the top of the reel. "A space to finally be free." I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just stared at the screen as the comments flooded in. "OMG, this is a dream. You're such a visionary, Delphine. How do you come up with this stuff?" I checked my email history, opened that message to Mom. The timestamp, 9:32 a.m. The forward to Delphine, 9:54 a.m., 22 minutes. That's all it took for my trust to become her blueprint. I locked my phone, took 3 slow breaths, told myself I must be overthinking. Surely they didn't mean it like that. That lie lasted exactly 1 week. Irina, my cousin on my dad's side, the one who never showed up to drama but always saw everything, texted me a screenshot late one evening. It was from the family group chat I wasn't included in. "Delphine, Mom really came through with that layout. Judelle, that beach house is such a vibe. Total upgrade. Cairo, LOL, manifesting with other people's brains." Message liked by both Delphine and Mom. I didn't reply. Not to Irina, not to anyone. I just saved the image to a folder I titled, clarity. Then I whispered to no one, "That's the cost of my silence." Jonas stirred in the bed behind me. I looked back at him, peaceful and untouched by all this. I wondered what he'd say if he knew, if he'd look at me differently, if he'd ask why I never said anything. I already knew the answer, because I kept hoping they'd stop, if I just kept being useful. But tonight, under the soft hum of the hotel mini fridge, something shifted. They didn't just steal a design, they rewrote me. And for the first time, I started writing back. By the second morning after the wedding, something in me had clicked into place. Not healed, not settled, just focused. I woke early, not because I slept well, I didn't, but because my mind wouldn't shut off. Jonas was still dozing, one arm draped across my side of the bed, like he was holding the night in place. I slipped out quietly, showered, and walked down to the hotel cafe without waking him. The lobby was still half asleep. A few business travelers hunched over their laptops, earbuds in, eyes glazed. I grabbed a chamomile tea and settled near the window with mine. I was answering vendor emails, scrolling through RSVPs that came in too late, when a small alert pinged at the top of my screen. Security notification. Unauthorized access attempt blocked file. Mentorship budget 2022.xlx. Location, Savannah, Georgia. Device, MacBook Pro. I didn't move for a full 5 seconds. That file wasn't public. It wasn't something I'd ever shared on social media or posted. I had only ever sent it to one person, my mother. The blood in my arms went cool, not cold. Just measured, like my body knew exactly what this was before my brain caught up. I pulled out my phone and texted Noah. Me. Are you up? I just got a security flag on the mentorship folder. Noah. Yep, on it. I didn't need to explain. She knew which file I meant. She also knew the importance of it. That spreadsheet contained projected distribution plans for the mentorship fund I'd quietly been developing for over a year. Targeted support for women in tech with no family support systems. Confidential donor info. Expansion roadmaps. Financial commitments. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Noah calling. Yeah? I said, already knowing it wasn't good. It came from a device labeled Avis MacBook Pro, she said. Same IP that pinged you before on that other shared folder 2 months ago. I closed my eyes. But it wasn't her login, was it? Nope, it was Lowell's. He didn't guess the password. He used a direct link, one that had already been authenticated. So she forwarded it to him, I murmured. There was a pause. Then Noah said what we both knew. This wasn't a breach, this was a handoff. I exhaled through my nose, slow and tight. Log everything. Already did. Want me to restrict future logins from all known Harper devices? Yes, lock it down, full restriction. I'll escalate from here. We ended the call, but the silence after felt like a vacuum, pulling every old memory into its center. I opened my sent mail, found the original email. It was dated 6 months ago. Subject line, thought you'd be proud of this. I had written, Hi Mom, just wanted to share what I've been working on. You always said I should do something that helps people. This mentorship fund is what I've built. Hope you're proud. Attached were the documents, the notes, and the private folder link. There was never a reply, not even a got it. And now, somehow, my younger brother Lowell, who once failed sophomore year for plagiarizing someone else's essay, had tried to open that exact file. I stared at the email thread for a long while. Then I opened a new folder on my desktop. Family, use, and tracking inside it, I created subfolders, forward logs, access records, legal prep, voice notes. I copied Noah's report into the appropriate folder. I added the original email, took a screenshot of the alert, labeled it all meticulously, time, date, source, device. I wasn't angry, not in the way they'd expect. I wasn't throwing my phone or sobbing into a pillow. I was charting, documenting, preserving. If they saw me as a vault to extract from, I'd become a vault that tracks the extraction. They always used my silence as proof of agreement. But silence isn't agreement. It's often just delay. Jonas texted me as I was labeling the last file. Still sleeping, you okay? Want coffee upstairs? I replied, Give me 20. I'm finishing something. He didn't ask what. I loved that about him. He respected boundaries that my own family never even noticed existed. I sat back, letting the last of the tea go cold. It was never about just the money. It was the assumption behind it, the entitlement to anything I created, the quiet belief that because I was capable, I must also be available, and because I was calm, I must be complicit. I looked out the window, the morning light bleeding through the gauzy curtains. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I wasn't going to be a folder someone could just open anymore. 3 days after the wedding, I found myself seated at Delphine's patio table under a cream umbrella with tassels that matched the napkins. The air smelled like sugared citrus and curated effort. She was hosting brunch for what she called the inner circle, a mix of influencers, local creatives, and whoever she wanted to impress this week. Jonas came with me, though I could tell he hated every second of it. I didn't blame him. The brunch wasn't about food or connection. It was a theater, and I was the unwilling centerpiece. Peach mimosas sparkled in vintage coupes, soft jazz drifted from a Bluetooth speaker, and everyone looked like they were waiting for something to happen. Delphine wore a flowing ivory jumpsuit, again suspiciously bridal. She moved around the table like a host on a lifestyle network. When she finally made it to my side, she handed me a gift, wrapped perfectly, down to the satin ribbon. "This is just a little something," she said, her voice sing-song and loud enough for others to hear. "Thought it might help with all that pressure you've been under." My stomach dipped. I untied the ribbon carefully. Inside was a hardcover book, pristine. Emotional Regulation for Difficult Women. I blinked once, then twice. A few people chuckled. One woman said, "That's actually a great read. I saw it on Reese's list." Someone else murmured, "Bold choice," and bit into a croissant like it was none of their business, because to them, it wasn't. Delphine just smiled. Even Mom let out a light laugh. "She's always been spirited. Maybe it'll give her some tools." I gripped the edges of the book like it might explode, and then I smiled, the kind of smile that's quiet and tight, the kind people mistake for graciousness. But Jonas knew. He reached under the table and touched my knee once, firmly. "Thanks," I said. My voice didn't shake. How thoughtful. The table moved on. The attention drifted, but I stayed seated inside that moment like it was a glass room. I used to believe composure was strength. I thought if I didn't flinch, I won. But that day I realized something else. Composure is just silence that learned how to dress. I carried that book home like it weighed nothing, but it stayed in my lap the entire drive. That evening, while Jonas took a call on the balcony, I opened Instagram. I don't know why, maybe instinct, maybe bad timing, but right at the top of my stories queue was Irina. She'd sent a message with just one line. "This is probably nothing, but you should see this." It was a screenshot of Delphine's private story, posted months ago. A black background with white text that read, "Ever tried helping someone mid-nervous breakdown over a Canva deck? Fun times." Followed by a crying laughing emoji. Below it, a few comments. "Girl, why do you always attract drama? You always get dragged into chaos, lol." The post had been liked by 2 mutual friends, one of whom had messaged me the week prior saying, "Your strength is inspiring. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't text Irina back. I just saved the screenshot and moved it into the same folder from earlier. Family use legal tracking. Subfolder, character evidence." Later that night, on our drive to a small rooftop dinner Jonas had arranged with some friends, I sat in silence. Not the kind that waits to be broken, but the kind that builds something inside. Jonas glanced over, one hand on the wheel, his voice soft. "You've been quiet since brunch." I nodded, then said, "Next time they try something like that, I won't hold back, not even a little." He was quiet for a second. "Are you sure?" I turned my head toward the windshield, eyes locked on the horizon. They've had enough chances. And just like that, something irreversible happened. Not dramatic, not loud, just a final switch. I didn't need their understanding anymore. I needed them to understand I was done asking. The morning sun didn't feel warm when I stepped onto the back patio of my parents' house. It was bright, yes, picturesque even. Everything about the setup screamed, "See? We're just a happy family." Florals spilled from vintage pitchers on every table. Ceramic plates were arranged with magazine-level symmetry. There was fresh squeezed juice in delicate carafes, and enough mason jars with pastel-striped straws to make a lifestyle blogger weep. Delphine was already seated, legs crossed, sunglasses too large for her face. She waved when she saw me. "You came! I thought you might still be mad." Her tone was light, teasing, like we were joking about a spilled drink, not a public humiliation. Lowell laughed. "Come on, it was just a gift. People need to chill." Jonas stood stiff beside me. He hadn't said much that morning. I think he was giving me space, or maybe waiting to see if I'd change my mind about coming. But I didn't. I needed to see if any of them would pretend this brunch didn't carry a crater beneath the table. Turns out they all could. We sat. Avis poured coffee into a pale blue cup that matched her blouse. Elwood, my father, reached for the fruit platter like he didn't have a single thought about what had gone down 4 days earlier. Small talk floated like pollen. "Delphine, how's the podcast launch?" "Oh, we hit 1,000 downloads already. People love the authenticity vibe." Lowell chimed in. "I've been digging into this new crypto. Total game changer." Avis smiled like she was soaking it all in, proud of her offspring's little empires. Not one word about the wedding, not the toast, not the frame, not even the fact that they gave a gift engraved with my shame. I glanced at Jonas. He was trying, he really was, to keep his mouth shut. But I saw it in the tight line of his jaw, the subtle tapping of his finger on the napkin. He cleared his throat. "I just want to say something, real quick." The table paused. "What happened at the wedding," Jonas said evenly, "wasn't okay." No one looked at him. No one looked at me either. Elwood reached for a bowl of cobbler. "Who wants more dessert, still warm?" Delphine laughed. "Dad's priorities." Lowell smirked. Avis added cream to her coffee. And the moment passed, like nothing had been said at all. Jonas set down his fork with an audible clink. He didn't say another word. He didn't need to. The message had been received and discarded. That was when I stood. The chair scraped against the patio bricks. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My words cut sharper when they were still. "You don't get to humiliate me and then pretend it didn't happen." Nobody moved. I looked at Delphine. "You made a joke, right? A funny little jab? Then why hide your story from me afterward?" She blinked, but said nothing. I turned to Avis. "You laughed. You always laugh. And then you act like it's all love. That's not love, that's performance." Still no one spoke. Their silence was choreography now, refined and repeated. I scanned each face at the table, then landed on my father. "And you?" I asked. "You've been silent so long I forgot what your voice sounds like when it isn't repeating a menu item." Elwood looked up. "This is not the place." "That's the problem," I said. "It never is. That's how we keep getting here." I picked up the empty mimosa glass in front of me and placed it down, gently. This fake harmony? It's just more control. You want to bury the fire before anyone smells the smoke." Jonas rose beside me, not touching, just standing in alignment. I looked at each of them again. "You've mistaken my silence for weakness. But here's the truth. Silence is your currency, not mine, and I'm broke." Delphine opened her mouth, probably to say something dismissive, something rehearsed, but I held up a finger. "Next time, it won't be private." And then I walked out of the garden, not waiting for permission or apologies. Jonas followed a beat later. Behind me, I heard Elwood say, "Let her go. She'll cool off." They always said that. They never noticed I wasn't boiling anymore. I was done. The next evening, I was in my hotel room, the sky outside bruised with the last strokes of dusk. I'd kicked off my shoes, pulled my laptop onto my thighs, and was halfway through organizing the folder labeled Family Use Legal Tracking when my phone buzzed. A message from Kayla, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. "Hey, is this about you?" No context, just a link. The thumbnail alone made my chest tighten. A podcast banner in soft beige tones with 2 hosts smiling like therapists who drank green juice for breakfast. The title? When Love Isn't Enough, Navigating Family with Narcissists. I clicked. There she was, Delphine, my sister, her voice all warmth and humility. Not every story has a clear villain. Sometimes people are just damaged, and they drag others into their chaos. The host murmured something about boundaries and empathy. Delphine continued, softer now. Some people make themselves so hard to love, and then call it loneliness. They don't realize the bridge burnt behind them wasn't sabotage. It was self-preservation. I sat completely still. She never said my name. She didn't have to. Anyone who knew us would know exactly who she meant. The recent wedding, the brunch, the quirky frame. It was all fresh in everyone's mind. I closed the podcast app, heart pounding, not with sadness, but with an icy sort of rage. By the time I opened Instagram, I already knew what I'd find. A carousel post from Delphine. The first photo, us as kids, sitting by a lake. The second, her crying into a tissue, perfectly lit. The third, a sunset over the beach house. Caption: family wounds are the hardest. I tried to love her, even when she made it unbearable. Healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. The comments were already piling up. Wow, so raw. You're brave for speaking your truth. She sounds toxic AF. You deserve peace, girl. It was like watching my own reflection get erased in real time. And the worst part? They believed her. The curated sadness, the soft voice, the carefully chosen phrases like emotionally volatile and trying so hard. All of it woven into a story that made her the survivor and me the storm. I wasn't angry because she lied. I was angry because she lied so well. I minimized the window and reached for my laptop. The folder was still open, its title now feeling more prophetic than practical. Family use, legal tracking. I clicked into it, breathing slow. My fingers moved without hesitation. I opened the PDF with my financial contributions, the forwarded emails, the deck she'd used for the beach house, the spreadsheet Lowell accessed, attached each to a single email. Addressed it to a woman I knew from a tech equity panel last year, someone who'd once told me, when you're ready to tell your story, tell it to someone who won't flinch. Subject: when the villain speaks first. Body: I'm done protecting the narrative. Here's mine. I clicked send. Then I leaned back and waited. An hour later, I posted one tweet. No hashtags, no threads, no drama, just, silence doesn't mean guilt, it means exhaustion, receipts incoming. Within minutes, my notifications exploded. Retweets, DMs, mentions from people I didn't even know followed me. Jonas walked in from grabbing dinner, setting down a takeout bag from the Thai place down the street. He stopped mid-step when he saw my face. You okay? I tilted the laptop toward him so he could see the tweet. He blinked. Did you just go live? I nodded. No more whispers. Let them hear me roar. He didn't say anything else, just came around the couch and sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. That was his way of saying he was with me. No speech, no strategy, just presence. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Marina. Delphine's freaking out. Just saw your tweet. She's trying to get ahead of it. I almost smiled. For once, she wasn't 5 steps ahead. She was behind, panicked, reacting, and I wasn't afraid of her anymore. The Harper Foundation gala glittered like a snow globe shaken just for show. Glass walls, golden centerpieces, a string quartet playing jazz renditions of pop hits. I walked in with Jonas beside me, our steps aligned, our hands loose but close. Delphine was already at the mic. She wore a satin navy gown and her favorite expression, remorseful hero. Her voice, velvet-wrapped, floated through the crowd. Healing, she said, starts with telling the truth, even when it's hard, even when it paints you in an unflattering light. The audience clapped, polite, detached. I scanned the room, women in heels balancing tiny hors d'oeuvres, men sipping bourbon and glancing at their phones. My tweet was still trending. Screens lit up around us like fireflies. They'd seen it. They knew. And she knew I was here. Jonas leaned in. Ready? I nodded. Let's find our seats. This should be interesting. We passed a cluster of community leaders and sponsors. Some nodded, others avoided eye contact. Delphine caught sight of us and smiled like nothing had happened, that same damn smile she wore when she gave me the frame. The host announced, up next, we're honored to welcome Marcy Harper to speak on women's leadership and resilience. As I stepped forward, my mother leaned toward me. Keep it classy, she whispered. You've said enough already. I turned slightly. Have I? The mic felt colder than I expected. I wrapped my fingers around it, grounding myself. Thank you, I began, scanning the room. Tonight's about women who lead, and what they overcome to do it. I paused. I used to believe silence was strength, that enduring pain without protest was noble, but I've learned silence is also how harm survives. A murmur swept through the crowd. Phones lifted. Some started recording. I won't waste your time with vague empowerment phrases. I'm going to be direct. I looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some judgmental, some hopeful. 2 weeks ago, I was publicly mocked at my own wedding. A gift, engraved with biggest disappointment, was presented to me by my family. Delphine's face froze. I've been called difficult, emotional, dramatic. These are the tools people use to discredit women who won't stay quiet. Someone in the back gasped audibly. My sister recorded a podcast about a narcissistic sibling. She never said my name but didn't have to. Then posted a carousel of curated sympathy, painting herself as the victim. Delphine took a step forward. Marcy. Jonas stood. His voice was calm, firm. Let her speak. You've had your turn. The room went silent. My mother motioned to the host, whispering something behind her hand. I didn't care. I've got receipts, I continued. Financial records showing misuse of funds I gave in good faith. Screenshots of my private files accessed without permission. Comments made about my mental health. Mocked, shared, laughed at. I inhaled, let it settle. And I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because women like me, like some of you, are told to keep it quiet, to preserve the family name, to smile through sabotage. I looked at my mother, then my sister. Neither blinked. Well, I said, I don't do quiet anymore. The room held its breath. Family doesn't mean immunity, not anymore. I handed the mic back to the host and walked off stage. Jonas met me halfway, hand outstretched. Not to pull me, just to meet me. The applause started as a whisper, then grew louder. Some clapped out of shock. Others, because they knew. Delphine turned and walked out, her heels clicking like punctuation marks on marble. Avis sat stone still. Elwood adjusted his cufflinks. The show was over, but I wasn't acting anymore. They always expected me to break. I did, just not the way they hoped. 3 days after the gala, I sat at my kitchen island in Atlanta, barefoot, hair tied back, sipping from a chipped mug that still read Best Daughter. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it was the biggest cup I had, and this morning, I needed more caffeine than sentiment. My inbox was flooded, subject lines blinking like tiny sirens. Brand terminates partnership with Delphine Harper. Podcast host releases statement, ethical concerns, influencer backlash, family isn't a PR campaign. No phone call, no apology, just digital vanishing acts. Delphine had gone quiet. Posts archived, comments off, stories deleted. Avis hadn't been tagged in any family photo roundups this week. Even distant cousins started unfollowing. They didn't apologize. They disconnected, which honestly was the most honest thing they'd done in years. Jonas walked in from the bedroom holding his tablet. He looked well rested. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in 2 days. He set the tablet down. Noah sent the full log file. Everything's timestamped and clean. I turned the screen toward me. There it was, the IP trail, the access attempts, the forwarded links, the name Lowell Harper attached to the login. Same device ID as Avis's MacBook. The same link I sent her 10 months ago. I had built something good. My own company, my mentorship deck, my design plans, and they'd pass them around like party favors. Jonas clicked into a folder labeled Legal, where Noah had uploaded her report. You ready to file? I didn't flinch. Yes. We submitted the digital privacy breach with the appropriate agency. It was surgical, quiet, but not invisible. No threats, no grandstanding, just facts. That night, I opened my shared drive and started purging. First, I revoked access for Avis, Lowell, and even the old email Delphine had once begged me to just include, in case she ever wanted to support my work. I removed them from archived projects, financial access points, and advisory boards. They wouldn't be borrowing my light again. Not to warm themselves or to shine on their narratives, I deleted the old Harper family share drive and replaced it with a clean version labeled Forward Only. Then I pulled up my company's leadership page and edited my bio. Removed any reference to daughter of local philanthropists. That title had expired. Late into the night, while Jonas read beside me, I drafted a post. Not a takedown, a boundary. I titled it, "This isn't about revenge, it's about recovery." I uploaded redacted screenshots, blurred names, intact timelines. I wrote, "Sometimes what looks like silence is really just survival. I didn't go public to punish anyone. I spoke up because protecting your dignity should never feel like betrayal." I attached the screenshot of Delphine's mocking, nervous breakdown post and added, "This is what erasure looks like, dressed in likes and filters." I posted it to Medium and linked it on my professional page. Then I shut my laptop. The post went viral overnight. Not celebrity viral, real viral. People, women especially, messaged me. "Thank you for this." I thought I was the only one whose family weaponized silence. This helped me walk away. It didn't feel like vindication. It felt like oxygen. The next morning, I walked into my studio and lit a candle by the window. Not a ritual, a reminder. I hadn't burned the house down. I just stopped letting it trap me. It had been 2 quiet weeks since the gala. Not silent, just still. The kind of stillness that settles in after everything breaks loose. Like the hush after a thunderstorm, when the sky stops cracking open and just hangs, gray but calm. The leaves barely move. The puddles mirror a sky that seems unsure of how to begin again. That morning, I woke up to the soft patter of spring rain on my windows in Atlanta. Light, rhythmic, cleansing. The kind of rain that doesn't demand attention, but invites reflection. I didn't mind it. I brewed my coffee slowly, letting the ritual pull me into the present. No rush, no urgency. Just me, the soft sound of the rain, and the hum of a city that hadn't yet opened its eyes. I settled at my desk, pulled my robe tighter around me, opened my laptop, and began scrolling through emails. Most were the usual clutter: newsletters, invoices, a few messages from mentees. And then I saw her name. Subject line, "Still family." I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, heart suddenly tight in my chest. The cursor hovered, waiting on me. The steam from my mug curled upward, wrapping itself around the silence like it wanted to hold the moment with me. I sat like that for a while. Maybe 10 seconds, maybe 20 minutes. Long enough for the coffee to cool slightly. Eventually, I clicked. "I've always loved you, even when you couldn't see it. You misunderstood. You're still my sister. We're still family." That was it. No, I'm sorry. No, I shouldn't have said that. No real ownership. Just a revisionist attempt at closure, crafted to look like compassion. A passive reach, positioned like grace, but laced with implication. Like she was the one forgiving, while I was the one refusing to be forgiven. It read like someone trying to end a chapter without admitting they burned the pages. I didn't reply. Didn't forward it to Jonas, even though I knew he'd want to see it. Didn't screenshot it. Didn't rage text anyone. Didn't even delete it. I just marked it unread, then archived it. That was my response. My version of a boundary. Quiet, final, intentional. Outside, the rain didn't let up. I stayed in, lit the candle I'd started lighting every morning after the gala. A new habit, or maybe a ritual. Not to remember, but to recenter. Not nostalgia. Just a small flame that helped me feel grounded. I logged into the back end of the mentorship platform I'd built. The one they once laughed at, diminished in those sharp, fake smile ways. The one they told me was too niche, too idealistic. Now it was growing, not viral, not explosive, but steady, real. There were new donations, small ones, $10 here, $25 there. Alongside them, short messages that landed louder than any check. Keep going. Wish I had this in my 20s. You're building something real. I stared at the screen for a while, then clicked into the Programs tab. I created a new initiative, Rebuild, for women recovering from family emotional manipulation. No press release, no Instagram post with a quote card, no announcement, just a simple description and an open door. Around lunchtime, I stretched out on the couch, phone face down on the coffee table. No sound, no notifications. I hadn't opened Instagram in days, didn't care what Delphine had posted or deleted. Whether Avis was still trying to position herself as the center of everyone's brunch plans. Let them talk. Let them defend whatever fiction they'd spun. I was out of the game. Then my phone buzzed, just once. A message. No subject line, just a single sentence. Because of your story, I packed a bag and left my mother's house last night. Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy. I exhaled. Not the kind of exhale that's dramatic or performative. The kind that sneaks out of you without a sound, but lifts weight you didn't know you were still carrying. I leaned my head back. Tears didn't fall, but they brimmed. Not from sadness, from something cleaner, something closer to recognition. That kind of moment where you remember why you started. Impact doesn't always show up in headlines or follower counts. Sometimes it arrives in the quiet bravery of one woman finding a door she thought was locked, only to realize it had always been open, just never visible. The next morning, the rain had stopped. I got dressed in a hoodie, pulled my hair into a knot, and walked to the cafe 2 blocks from my apartment. No makeup, no earbuds. Just me in my body, feeling present for once. The barista greeted me by name. I smiled, genuinely. Said good morning without rushing. I didn't check Twitter. Didn't open my analytics dashboard. I ordered my usual, grabbed a seat by the window, and pulled out my journal. I wrote, "You don't need an apology to heal. You need truth. You need boundaries. And the courage to walk away, even when they call it betrayal. Especially then." I closed the journal and slid it back into my bag. Outside, the sidewalk still shimmered with yesterday's rain, but the clouds had started to lift. The light was different. Not bright, but clearing. A beginning, maybe. They might still tell their version of me, but I'm not listening anymore. Some stories don't end with apologies. Some don't come full circle. But healing isn't about closure. It's about clarity. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt like your family sees you as the problem for simply having boundaries, if you've been told you're too sensitive, too much, or just hard to love because you refuse to keep playing a role that hurt you, I want you to know this. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for walking away to protect your peace. I used to think love meant tolerance, that forgiveness required forgetting, but peace, I've learned, doesn't beg for proof. It doesn't need everyone to understand. It just needs you to understand your worth. You don't have to burn bridges, but you're allowed to stop setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. And maybe your story isn't this one. Maybe your wound looks different, but if it still aches, you're still healing, and healing is still happening. So here's my question to you. What would you say to the younger version of yourself, still trying to please people who never tried to understand her? Leave a comment and tell me. Or just drop a if this resonated. Type 1 if you've been there, or let me know where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if this story touched something in you, please consider subscribing. We share real stories for real people with real heart. And if this helped you even a little, I hope you'll be here for the next one. Until then, be safe, be loud, and most importantly, be free.